Respawn is too good a company to be stuck doing Star Wars games. Don't get me wrong, I enjoyed Fallen Order, and I'm sure the sequel is much better, but this studio has way too much sauce to be making Diet Dark Souls featuring glup shitos. Military shooters get a bad rap these days because they were the superhero films of the 7th gen. One or two franchises became instant hits, everyone saw how successful they were and chased the bag, and the market got flooded with them to the point where they fell out of favor. Also, cottage industries sprung up on making think pieces on the geopolitical implications of their plots, as if they were more than whatever the hell my dad watches on Netflix. But like everything else, including superhero movies, when military shooter campaigns were good, they were good. And Titanfall 2? It's Winter Soldier, babes. Titanfall 2 is a 2016 sci-fi military FPS by Respawn Entertainment. You'll play as Jack Cooper, a rifleman in the good guy army, working his way up the ranks so that he can become a pilot to fight the bad guy army. And not just any kind of pilot, but a Titan pilot. Titans are the bipedal mecha that control the flow of battle in the future. A pilot can manually operate a Titan inside its hull, or fight alongside it while its AI manages the autopilot. On foot, pilots have plenty of movement options. They can run, slide, vault over small heights, wall run, and ride zip lines. They also have a cloak ability that makes them invisible for a short period of time, to break off of enemy contact, or to set up ambushes. In a Titan, pilots can choose different loadouts on the fly, which changes Titan's equipped weapon and skills. Skills operate on cooldown timers and provide offensive and defensive options. If you deal enough damage with a Titan, you feel a meter that triggers a super attack when activated. If you've ever played D.Va and Pharah in Overwatch, you've got an idea of how Titan combat plays out. Titanfall 2 is a game full of paradoxes. It looks like every drab mill shooter from the glory days of the 360 and PS3, but it has a schmovement of Doom 2016. It's a Western mecha game that straddles a line between real robot and super robot conventions. It's got a setting and cast that are easily forgettable for me, but the one relationship that was supposed to matter, that being Cooper and his Titan, became my driving force in playing through the campaign. Also, it's set within the Apex cinematic universe, so there are connections between characters and weaponry. Actually, that explains why you can ride up zip lines and why grenade tossing displays that preview arc. Huh. If I had to describe Titanfall 2 with 2 words, they'd be butter smooth. The main menu is minimalist, but simple to navigate, and provides you easy access to all the necessary settings you want to adjust before starting the game. Sounds weird to bring up, but I can't understand how nice it is to have a simple UI like this. This buttery smoothness extends to the controls. You can adjust whether you want to hold or toggle your sprint and aiming, and parkouring is as simple as running alongside a wall and pressing jump, or pressing crouch to slide under an obstacle. You automatically climb up any surface if you can see over the top half of the obstacle. Combat just works. Enemies have chunky hitboxes, and I didn't have any problems landing headshots with sniper rifles on normal. There's plenty of weapons to choose from, but shotguns are stupid good in this game, so you know I had to do it to them. If you can get behind an enemy without drawing attention, you can do an execution by holding the melee attack button. Checkpointing is fairly generous, and most of my resets in the early game were due to screwing up platforming challenges. Combat might feel too easy on normal, but you can change the difficulty on the fly to dial in the challenge for each encounter. If the game were just about the movement and shooting, it would already be leagues better than its contemporaries. But look at that title. We didn't come here just for that.
Stand by for Titanfall!
I'm glad I played Lost Planet and Left Alive before Titanfall 2, because I'd have been a lot less charitable to those games if I did it the other way around. What I like about Titan gameplay is that there's enough similarity to controlling a Titan as there is to moving on foot to not feel jarring when you shift between modes, but there's also enough to distinguish the movement between Titan and on foot that you'll never mistaken one for the other. The obvious difference is that Titan movement feels big and stompy and slightly slower than on foot, but not so slow as to feel like it hinders you in combat. You can't jump in the Titan, you can dash to break contact or to close in on a target. Besides firing your main weapon, you can use your skills to help you out in a fight. Some skills add additional maneuverability, and others synergize with your weapons. Instead of cloaking, your Titan will activate a defensive shield that changes based on your loadout, but just like the cloak, your shield can only be active for a short period of time. In my Left Alive review, I said that piloting a Wanzer should have felt like the high point in any part of the game, but it was a complete opposite because the controls were way too different from the on-foot movement, and it never felt like I developed any mastery over the Wanzer because the set pieces were so sporadic. That's not an issue in Titanfall 2. You start the game with a training simulation that helps you acclimate with the controls, and once you get your Titan up and running, the game eases you into learning its nuances. Your first Titan fight involves a single target, and beating it leads to a skirmish with several hostile and friendly Titans involved. Your Titan has its own health meter that's cushioned by a rechargeable shield, kind of like Halo 1 Halo Reach. You can pick up Titan batteries on the battlefield to heal your Titan, or you can pick them up by killing enemy Titans. At key points in the campaign, you'll fight a boss. These bosses are all mercenaries working for the bad guy army to deliver something to the general. They ambush your squad early in the game and kill your senpai, who transfers control of his Titan to you before dying. This is how you do a boss squad. Before every fight, the game cuts to a mini cutscene where the boss introduces themselves and opens up their Titan hatch so you can see them taunting the player. This is a really clever way to build rapport and make a character memorable to the player. One of my complaints with Daemon X Machina was that although the characters are full of personality, there were way too many characters to keep track of alongside their mecha, and I just ended up glazing over the whole thing. I preferred Armored Core 6 because even though you never saw the pilots inside the ACs, their personalities stood out and I could associate them with their mecha. Titanfall 2 hits the perfect middle ground for me. A small enough cast for me to keep track of throughout the campaign, and enough screen time for each character so that I could distinguish them from each other. After the first boss, you pick up a radio and can listen in on enemy chatter. You learn about their personalities well before you actually confront them, so you have an idea of what you're going to face when the chapter ends. Each boss serves as a way for you to learn the matchup for every Titan loadout, so you can figure out which loadouts work best in the campaign before trying them out in the multiplayer. That's probably the one criticism I have about Titanfall 2. The running joke with military shooter campaigns is that they're glorified tutorials for the multiplayer, and Titanfall 2 ain't beating the allegations on that front when it comes to the Titan gameplay. Finding new Titan loadouts in the campaign really does feel like it's prepping you for the multiplayer. I don't think Respawn intended for this, but it's kind of meta how the campaign starts with you in a simulation learning the controls before going into actual combat, while the campaign itself serves as a simulation for you to learn the controls before going online to fight actual players. So yeah, shooting good, mecha good. What else is there? There's a singularity set piece in this game. If you don't know what singularity is, it's a 7th gen military FPS where you jump between the past and present at the press of a button. The whole game's based on that premise, and you can watch Civi talk about it if you click this link up here. The time jumping starts off simple enough where you jump from either point to overcome an obstacle. Maybe a door is closed in the present that you can open in the past, or a laser grid in the past is powered off in the present. Then you incorporate it in combat. Time jumping replaces your cloak button, so jumping from the past to avoid guards will show you their time echoes in the present. You can then reposition and jump back to ambush those guards, but from their viewpoint, you just teleported behind them.
Dr. Alexander Darren, log 14.6. The intruder has some kind of advanced tech and is slaughtering our response teams. Tyler and Wildlife Research said 2 teams were taken out at the elevator banks in a matter of seconds. By one guy.
Whatever you kill in the past will show up as a corpse in the present. It's such a cool attention to detail. The present isn't a safe haven, by the way. You either have to fight off whatever wildlife took over the area, or any guard bots that are still operational. These guys are great because they're effectively zombies in how they shamble or crawl towards you due to years of disrepair. Makes the present feel more like Ravenholm than a sci-fi base. Then you have to do platforming challenges with the time shifting. Stuff you'd see in a Ratchet & Clank game where you gotta shift in midair to land on a platform that wasn't there before. And it culminates in a falling sequence where you have to shift between periods to avoid hazards and shifting becomes a QTE without the prompts. There's a part at the end of the set piece where I had to fight 2 Titans and some guard bots in the past, but my Titan didn't come with me when I shifted. I kept dying to these Titans until I realized that I could get in my Titan and then shift. Now I've got a fighting chance. That's not the only set piece, by the way. One of the bosses is a sicko who likes to play with her food, so she makes you go through the Portal 2 opening to reach future Nuketown and pits you and some other good guy soldiers against a squad of bad guy soldiers and Titans. Another set piece has you leapfrogging between aircrafts, like that one chapter in Bayonetta that everyone hates. At some point, you get a tool that lets you manipulate electronic controls for platforming challenges, but it's also useful in activating guard bots to fight for you instead of the enemy. Just when I thought I'd seen everything the game had to offer, I get captured and lose all my gear. I think, oh great, it's gonna be one of those Escape from New York bits where I have to reacquire all my stuff again. But then the game gives me a smart pistol that auto-targets everything nearby, and it becomes the best shooting gallery / parkour set piece I've ever played. So yeah, shooting good, mecha good, set pieces good. Are there any downsides? Yes. Besides the feeling like a glorified tutorial thing I said earlier, there's an entire chapter devoted to being one long Titan fight. You drop in with your squad to take on the enemy, and it's good for most of the chapter. There's a constant feeling of forward momentum to the sequence that you would get from doing D-Day in a World War II FPS. But the final fight at the end of the chapter pits you with so many enemy Titans that the frame rate started getting choppy for me. Coupled with the overwhelming number of enemies that can easily melt you if you overextend yourself or approach the fight with the wrong loadout, I felt limited in my options here, and the majority of my resets happen in this chapter. Friendly AI is good for distracting enemies, but I can never tell how good they are when it comes to dealing damage. Beating this fight was less about playing the way I wanted to play, and more about finding the safest loadout to use and making good use of my Titan skills. My other issue with this game is that while I think the HUD works for the most part, you could do a better job displaying your Titan super attack being ready to use, instead of just flashing the alert in big bold letters in the top center of the screen. If you can get a boss down to their reserve health, you can do an execution on them, but most of my executions were obscured by that big ass text. Also, the campaign is really short. Looking it up online told me that the campaign would span 6 hours, but I clocked in at 7 and some change due to all the resets. I don't necessarily think this is a bad thing, as I'd rather have a campaign end strong than feel like it goes on forever. But there are 2 things to account for regarding the campaign's length. 1. You don't get to kill the head of the Merc Squad. You kill all of his buddies, but he gets to live on and gloat about it. And it turns out he's the guy behind Apex Legends, so he's never gonna die so long as that game is still going. And 2, the game originally went for $60, but now it's sitting at $30 and goes on for sale for single digits. On sale, I'd say this is a steal for the campaign, but I can only imagine what it would be like if I sunk full price into this, if all I wanted to do was play single player. That's the kind of pricing that causes people to go into sunk cost coping. Thank God it's a good game, yeah? Oh yeah, this game clears Lost Planet because I actually cared about my robot. I didn't elaborate on it before, but the highlight to this game is the rapport you build with your Titan, BT.
All threats eliminated. Area secure. Are you okay, pilot?
Hell yeah. I'm on a hot streak.
Your vitals do not indicate a temperature problem. Do you wish for me to investigate this hot streak sensation further?
Funny, BT. You're funny.
Apparently.
Cooper and BT got that perfect goofball straight man dynamic you need for this kind of relationship. BT is appropriately deadpan, but he's not brain dead.
Wind, 3 knots, heading 274. Range, 95 meters. Projectile mass, 89 kilograms. Trust me.
I think I'm going to need some new underpants.
Copy that. Noted for the next supply drop.
The setting seems to acknowledge Titan AIs for what they are, and regard them with some respect, but they also recognize that they're still tools of war. Again, This is not the kind of game you look to for any deep commentary on war. The good guy's home planet is called Harmony, and the bad guy's home planet is called Typhon, the Greek monster that inspired the term typhoon. You can find audio logs describing how bad it is to work in the bad guy's science department, but I'm deliberately calling them good guys and bad guys to denote how simplified their struggle looks. If you want me to sum up the game in a cute pull quote, I'd say, what if Killzone 2 and Bulletstorm were fun? Play Titanfall 2. Get it on sale, and hopefully you don't mind EA installing Not Origin as additional DRM.